Sometimes one runs away to find oneself, and sometimes one runs away to lose oneself. Graham Greene.
We've discussed escapism for the lower and middle classes, but what is escapism for the upper classes? Welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. And we've done a video about why video games is the refuge of low-income men. We've done a video about why watching sports is the opium of the middle classes. And I've also discussed how social media is escapism for the lower and middle classes. But what about the upper classes? Is travel the escapism for them? It's not as simple as you would think. Let's not begin with an answer, but with a question. When you know somebody who suddenly moves to Provence or the Amalfi Coast, or posts a starting fresh message from Bali, are they on vacation or are they running away from something? And how would you know the difference? That's what we're going to address here on this video, because it's not really simply straightforward of traveling is just always an escapism. It's often more of why people are traveling, and also economic forces that are shaping this conversation to a degree that travel is not necessarily exclusive to the upper class anymore. In fact, given how affordable air travel is, hotels close to major airports around the world, and the explosion of Airbnb, we've probably seen travel become way more accessible to people it previously wasn't. So, is travel escapism upper class? The answer, like so many other things in elite behavior, is both yes and no. And the ambiguity is the point. Because in matters of class, opacity is a feature, not a flaw. Distance, both geographic and emotional, is really often the strategy. Travel is escapism for those who can afford it to be a real escape. If you are going on vacation with your 2 weeks off from work on PTO, that's not really escape. That's taking a temporary break from going back to your real life. Whereas it's a real escape if you are able to have more of an indefinite type of expedition. The long arc of aristocratic flight has a lot of historical precedent. In imperial Rome, if you were a disgraced senator or member of nobility, you would retreat to your estate on Capri or in Campania as a chance to have some convalescence. In the Gilded Age, if you were a family that was rocked with scandal or financial collapse, you would quietly spend your summer in Europe or in Rhode Island or up in Maine just to get out of the news cycle and the New York social scene so people could forget about you. Or let's take a look at Victor Hugo, one of France's most celebrated writers. In 1851, after opposing the rise of Napoleon III, Hugo had to flee to self-imposed exile. He spent nearly 20 years on the island of Guernsey. He is technically free to return, but he chose isolation over submitting to his political opposition. His home became both a signal and a fortress. Basically, he could afford to disappear on his own terms. Another famous example of a nobility kind of escaping their problems via travel is Lord Byron. In 1816, he faced a lot of debt and scandals and rumors of issues with his personal life. He left Britain entirely. He went to Switzerland, Italy, and eventually died fighting as a volunteer in the Greek War of Independence. He didn't really have any round-trip ticket or intent to return. He just left and stayed away. This kind of travel wasn't leisure, but strategic disappearance, a form of dignified exile, a way to protect social standing by not facing scandal, but by geographically avoiding it. And this isn't just some historical pre-modern thing. This happens today. When someone quietly decides to disappear to Lisbon or Bali, or even more domestically, like if somebody who randomly decides, oh, I'm just going to leave New York or Newport Beach, California, or whatever city that I've built my reputation and move to like Scottsdale or Nashville or Charleston, South Carolina, or Miami and rebuild from scratch. They claim they're trying to start a new life, or they want to experience a different lifestyle, or maybe buy a bigger house, but it's really ultimately just trying to escape one's reputation. When someone quietly moves to Lisbon or Bali to work remotely for a few months, it often means I need to disappear and lay low without anybody calling me out on it. It's kind of image management by the way of longitude and time zone. The biggest example is what's going on with crypto. A lot of crypto bros, when regulators start to come after them or the market turns against their portfolios and investors become less than pleased, they will migrate to places like Bali and Dubai. And there's other examples. It may not be anything scandalous. It's just some people are just tired of the stress and the hassle of their old life back home. Like a good example of this would be Hugh Hendry. He was a hedge fund manager that made a good amount of money, and he retired after shutting down his hedge fund Eclectica. But he didn't really just stay put, and he just disappeared. He moved to St. Barts, which is an old money luxury enclave in the Caribbean, and basically now just posts his economic commentary from the perspective of his beach bungalow with sandals and a relaxed button-up shirt, just chilling. It wasn't just a retreat. It was a curated act of aestheticized exile. He didn't just leave finance, he drifted away from it. He moved to a remote area for a permanent intent. And he could do it effortlessly because he had the resources and the money to do so. And he didn't have to explain himself. That's the ability of upper class real travel. In general, these people aren't choosing places because they're cheap. This isn't backpacking. This isn't just hiding out in Southeast Asia, hostel to hostel, and living off of your blogging income that you need to stretch $2,000 a month to live in Thailand. They're going to the French Riviera, St. Barts, Provence, Lake Como, Orange County, California, or Santa Barbara. They're not chasing affordability. They're chasing basically distance. They want to be as far away from their home area in a place they still find comfortable and enjoyable to be. Cost of living is a middle class concern. True class means go where you want, not where your budget says you can. And not really all travel is escapism. This is why this is not a straightforward question. Some just like to go on vacation, and I think vacation is a universal interest of people of all classes. Travel's been democratized. You could say it's prole drift, but it's definitely more affordable. Airfare relative to inflation is near record lows.
Speaking of travel, we are continuing the Analyzing Finance with Nick tour into October. We have confirmed stops in Santa Cruz, Amsterdam, Zurich, Rome, Washington, D.C., and in Boston throughout August and September. We will have a meetup in San Diego in October, but I am also considering adding a new stop in Toronto and returns to New York and Orange County this fall. For those interested, check the tour's Eventbrite page or vote for your suggested city in the meetup poll in the description and pinned comment.
Credit card points make travel a lot more affordable than it used to be. And Airbnbs and splitting those with friends have also made travel more affordable. And it's kind of blurred the line between aspirational and accessible. Like if your average influencer on YouTube is able to easily move to some place and hang out there for 3 months, is it really that much of a status flex anymore? Places that usually used to feel rare, like Cabo, Florence, and the Amalfi Coast, are now crowded with the same upper middle class people going on the same vacation circuits, whether for ski week or spring break or summer. I remember growing up, every Easter I would go to Palm Desert with my family at one of the high-end resorts there. And I would oftentimes see the same families from my hometown in Orange County all happen to be there for their Easter vacations as well. I see half of Newport Beach. The same thing when you see a lot of high schoolers who go to Cabo. They see all their friends from other local high schools in Orange County, California, or a lot of people in my parents' generation, boomers who go to Florence. It's kind of become an inside joke that Florence oftentimes is little America, and you'll often bump in the same people from your affluent suburbs in America all over the place when you are in Florence. The same kids you met when you went to college or high school together, the same peers you meet working in the financial industry or in medicine or fellow lawyers. They all go to the same JW Marriott tier resorts and hang out at the same pools and eating at the same restaurants. At your point, it's not really an escape. It's more kind of moving the country club from your hometown to another place temporarily. It's the same atmosphere, but in a different climate. And that's what upper middle class travel has essentially become. So what's the difference between travel for the elite as a real escape versus this kind of upper middle class performative pop-up social gatherings? Elite travel really isn't scheduled, it isn't visible, and it isn't really bragged about. Like, if you're somebody who has the means to travel whenever you want, wherever you want, it's not a big deal. The more excited somebody is for a trip, that's oftentimes a negative class signal because they don't get to do it very often. If you're traveling all over the world on an annual basis or more, it's not really as big of a deal, and you're going to have a more laid back approach to it. Travel is routine, a background condition of life. People don't get excited about driving on their commute to work on a day-to-day basis. Maybe if you're from a very underprivileged background and never had a car before, that's going to be very exciting. It's like, oh, wow, I get to go drive all over wherever I live and go visit places on the weekend. Like driving to the beach on a Saturday to a middle-class person is not going to really be something that people are super excited about. Whereas driving to the beach to somebody who grew up poor for the first time is a big deal. It's the same thing with travel. Like an elite person is flying off to some exotic Caribbean island or French Polynesia on a regular basis, or Europe, it's not going to be a big deal if you've gone there 10 plus times. Whereas somebody who's a middle class background who's never been to Europe before, it's going to be a much bigger deal. But there's some other like real class tells when it kind of comes to travel. One is understating. It's not really a flex to travel these cities. It's just a normal weekend getaway, or it's a normal Tuesday, even if you're completely retired. Other thing is remoteness and exclusivity. Places where these people go usually require multiple plane transfers or long drives once leaving the airport, and they're not really shown on Instagram because they don't have Instagram like worthy monuments, or they're just too far away from your weekend warrior type traveler or the person with a short amount of paid time off to really get there. Flying private is often something that makes these multiple transfer places a lot easier. And so inaccessibility is kind of a big one. Duration is the other big one. Like if you're going just for a 5-day break or even as long as a 2-week break, then it's more middle and upper middle class coded. But if you can just take off 3, 6, 9 months abroad and not have to explain yourself and have really no hurry to come back, and you can just buy a one-way ticket and do whatever, that's kind of more of a upper class tell. Flexibility. You don't have any fixed schedule. You don't have to, a lot of middle class and upper middle class people are very regimented with their travel. They book months in advance because you often get better deals if you do it that way. And you have to plan around other scheduled commitments, usually involving your job or business. Whereas if you are in these old money elites, you don't really have to worry about those kind of things. You can just buy a one-way flight and book the return flight the day before. Spend as much or as little time as you want. There's no PTO calendar to follow. It's just kind of the normal way of doing things. And then also they have a general indifference to cost. They're not optimizing for affordability. They're optimized for privacy and for the unique experiences that cannot really be replicated where they live. The less they say about their travels and act more nonchalantly, the more it signals. Travel is not really that special for the elites. So the bottom line is travel escapism for the upper class. Yes and no. If you have problems you're trying to run away from, whether personal problems, media scandals, financial issues, angering certain people in the community. A self-imposed exile is a classic way that the elites would escape scrutiny. In the age of the internet, it's increasingly difficult, or you just have to go to much more remote places, but it still can be done. If you're just trying to go on a normal vacation, then no, it's not escapism. However, there are a lot of people who are middle and upper middle class working professionals who use travel as kind of an escapism. Like, they don't like their job, they don't really like their life at home. And so they'll plan as many vacations as they can to get out of Dodge and to have a brief respite from the grind that is their life. I just even know personally, when I did have my last major job, I liked my job. That wasn't the issue, but I didn't particularly like the city I was living in. And so I would use every sort of 3-day weekend or extended paid time off to travel and go someplace completely different from where I was living, because I quite frankly just did not like the city I was living in for personal reasons. And once I moved to a city that I like a lot better, I got a lot less motivated to travel and leave every 3-day weekend. Now, most of the time, I don't do traveling just simply to get away anymore. Now it's kind of more with intent and purpose, because I actually like the geography of where I live. A lot of people, particularly among the professional classes who are transferred or forced to live in a city they don't particularly enjoy, often use travel as an escape even more than the elites do, because a lot of elites do enjoy their life at home, whereas a lot of more upwardly mobile people in the professional classes either live far away from home because they had to move for career opportunities, or don't like the city they're in or certain parts of the life they're in. These 3-day to 2-week breaks are kind of like their means to temporarily forget about it and recharge. Let me know what you think about this, and I look forward to talking to you more.